Medfield TV. Community shows.
Alrighty. So we were just in executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the MTA if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, teachers' assistants, and to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. At this point, we'll open to public input. All right. We're going to move on to the approval of the minutes, please. December 3rd and 17th. Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I was absent for the December 3rd meeting, and I've not yet had a chance to compare the minutes against the video, which I now understand we need to do. And the same is true with December 17th, so I moved to table.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, great. New business. Madeline L. Grant Scholarship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your packet, you have the materials that was submitted by Erin Haley, who graduated in 2017. In order to release the funds from the town, the school committee needs to vote to approve the release of $3,000 for the Madeline Grant Scholarship. I ask that you, based on the data you have, ask you approve that.
I move that we approve the Madeline Grant Scholarship.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Passed. She can get her check. And
Awesome. We'll let her know.
2019-2020 school calendar draft.
Okay, so in your packet, you had a draft of what the 2019-2020 calendar could look like. What's not in that is the release days, professional development release days, those types of things, but we tried to get a skeleton calendar that had all the holidays and everything. You'll see that there are, we would still finish June 15th, which is fairly early. I have not discussed this with leadership or usually pass it by the teachers union as well. Haven't had those conversations yet, but a couple of items of note. We do have in October, actually the end of September and October, 2 Jewish holidays in the school year, which we didn't have last year. We only had 1. And also Good Friday happens during the school year next year as well. So those are 3 days, actually 2, that we don't have in this school year. So that would be the only change. We have 1 full professional development day that right now we're looking at doing in March, but that's not definite yet. We need to meet with DLD and that group to see when they want to do the digital learning day. But the only thing that's left is to put the release days in for professional development. So any feedback, or I know we talked about this a lot last year.
I do have one piece of feedback,
Sure.
which is that I'm not sure if it happens in both conference periods for the elementary school, but for the first
the other
conference
piece we need
period, it ended up being 2 half-days in a row, which was a little kind of disconcerting
Okay.
for parents and teachers. So if we could
Okay.
kind of adjust that.
So 2 half-days in a row this year, so look at conferences.
In looking at this schedule, is there talk about conferences expanding in terms of, say, middle school someday?
Yeah, so that's a conversation I've had with both middle school and high school principal. I've actually shown them a layout that I saw at a different school where they had conferences at both the middle and high school level. It's definitely something that we're talking about. I think we'd have to, work with the teachers on that as well, because it would be a change in what they normally do.
Right.
I think, one of the obstacles that you always hear about is the amount of students that teachers have. I think that, where my kids go, they have conferences set up, 5 or 10-minute conferences, and at least that you have that connection. As a parent, if you want to have that conversation, you do. If you don't sign up. It's simple as that. And if you feel the need to really have that conversation and you don't get a chance in one of the slots that the teachers put out, then you make an appointment at some other point. But I know King Philip's been doing it like that for a long time, and others. So it's definitely a conversation that we've had, and something that we're looking at.
Okay, good. I hope we can move in that direction. Are there any things where wishes that the teachers have expressed that they want in the calendar, so to speak?
Well, I would say that one thing that they're very happy about is that release day before winter vacation. I mean,
That was great.
which is December 20th next year.
Okay.
I mean, that's something that, in the following year, 2021, we're going to have to look at when we do that break, because the holiday would be on a Thursday, so we have to take a look at whether we come back for a couple of days, and then, so that, we'll have to take a peek at that next year. No, I mean, I think that, one of the things that we brought to their attention last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, but I don't remember, is starting the teacher days the week before in August, so that third week in August. That went over like a lead balloon, so we...
Fair.
Yeah, so now we're back to that last week in August where the Monday, Tuesday, teacher days, and then kids start on that Wednesday, Thursday, release day on that Friday. Remember, we used to have that Friday off for years, so we went to the release day, so.
Beautiful. All righty.
Any other, I know we talked about when we were going to do release days in terms of the day of the week. That was something that we talked about a lot last year.
Right.
Any recommendations on that, or?
It was so kind of a little bit irregular this year, simply, for just in terms of scheduling. I think people didn't understand that that was like a new kind of consistent thing.
I think we wanted to
Not
make it
irregular,
irregular in
so
terms
much
of, so kids aren't missing the same thing all the
Right,
time.
right, yeah. No, and I think that's fine. But I didn't have any other additional feedback beyond that it was kind of almost more of a non-event having it on a Wednesday. I do think that, as Chris was worried about last year, it could definitely become the optional Friday.
Yeah.
If we were to do it more consistently on a Friday, although it would seem more convenient, you end up losing some school time there.
So I didn't check this year, I did check the year before, what the attendance rate was on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the Wednesday before the Christmas holiday. I need to check that and see what it is, because we had very high attendance on those days the first year we did. I just didn't check this past year. So that's something I'll look at too.
I'll tell you, I dragged Rachel to school, and she swore kicking and screaming nobody else was going to be there. So I don't know if that was true or not. But
I'll check it.
I do think, we talked a lot last year about the release dates being, moved around the calendar and not, on Fridays, because we intended both to hit the same classes a lot and to create an incentive for, just people skipping that school that day altogether. And, we have a half day because we need to have that time on learning to make our standards and to do the teaching that we think is important. But I think it's important to kind of move it around. But there are other districts, a lot of districts, that sort of build in every Wednesday or Tuesday. What is it? Newton used to be every Tuesday, I think, when I taught there a long time ago.
Yes.
There was, built-in professional development every second half of that day. I know that's difficult, probably more difficult because we're farther out from Boston and it creates different child care issues. But, as we start to talk about, or I hope to continue to talk about start time changes, I think that's something we might consider trying to build into the schedule. Okay. Because I do think there's a certain sense of, while it's better to kind of have those move around the calendar and not hit the same class every time. From a parent's perspective, with two working parents, my kids don't need anybody to take care of them anymore except the dogs. But other parents, I think, with younger kids, I think that predictability would be beneficial. So.
Okay. I looked at Dover Sherman's last year. I want to say that they had in the high 20s for release days at their elementary level. Because I think it was every Thursday they get out at like 1:20 or something.
Yeah. And it's not actually a full half day.
Right.
It's like kind of a truncated day.
Yeah. I know Wayland is every Wednesday. Newton, when I was there, was every Tuesday.
This one was still every K to 5 Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, was it only K to 5? So
Yeah, it went back to K to 5. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll come back next meeting and we'll have everything filled in, and then hopefully if you approve that, we'll get that out on the web.
Great.
We typically get parents calling central office asking about the calendar so they can plan vacations right around this time. So
Yeah.
we'd like to get it out at that point.
December flight schedules become available sometime next month, I think.
Exactly. All righty, superintendent's goals?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your packet was an updated version of superintendent's goals. So they're, typically what we do on these is every year, every couple of years, we build on these. Some of them are similar with added components. But professional practice goal comes out of the strategic plan, goal number 4, community strategy 1.1, communication. Increase blog posts, continue to use Twitter, Facebook, Blackboard Connect, Aspen, and Clear.gov, and then expand communication of the FY20 budget, which we talked about at our last meeting, and then implementation of the Apogee app, which is moving along. Owen and I have a video conference this week on that. It's not as quickly as we'd like to have it done, but it's still moving along. So that would be under the professional practice. Looking at student learning. Again, on the strategic plan, goal number 1, collaborative learning strategy 3.1, curriculum. 3.1.4, STEAM, strengthen and expand district offerings in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And the big part of this for this year, the remainder of this year and next year is looking to establish the district curriculum review process, which has not been in place here. And every year there'd be a review, and we have a process set up that Chris Martis will come to a meeting in February or March to present to you. And then our focus is on science. So at our next meeting, Nat Noller will be here to do some feedback and presentation on the science at the middle school level. I know that was something that Chris had mentioned a couple of meetings ago when we looked at MCAS. So they're going to be here to do a presentation on that. But we want to do a full curriculum review of science pre-K to 12. And, we have a process that Chris and I are working on for that, and he'll present that to you in a later meeting. So that's the student learning piece. Looking at the district improvement, there are 5 goals under that. So goal number 3 comes from goal number 2, well-being, out of the strategic plan, strategy 1.1, develop social emotional supports, and strategy 3.1, establish safe and healthy protocols. 1.1.5, identify areas of need with regards to health and wellness, and 3.1.2, review current workload structures, testing schedules, homework and school schedules. So that's a continuation of the current goal, and that's all being done through the SEL task force. So we'll have some more updates on that as we go through. Goal 4 comes out of goal number 5 of Medfield 2021, facilities and equipment, strategy 4.1, 4.1.1, renovation or relocation of Dale Street will be determined by a feasibility study. Again, when we started this last year, that was something we're looking at now that we've been accepted in the program. The feasibility study is where we're at this point. So work with the school building committee to hire the OPM and complete the feasibility study. So that's going to be the next 9 to 11 to 12 months working on that particular project. Number 5, support the implementation of challenge success at Medfield High School. Again, I know that we've been rolling out this program now for a couple of months, and it doesn't happen as quickly as everyone would like, but it is change, and it is a process. So we've been meeting every 4 weeks, every 3 weeks or so as a group, and we're meeting again this week. So we'll have more information on that as we go along, but just supporting that whole piece. Continue to manage elementary school growth and ensure implementation of early education programs and school committee class size guidelines. So as you know, we've talked about this now for multiple meetings. That's going to be a dilemma to manage. It's not going to solve, it's going to be a manage dilemma. So I think that's, as we go through that process, our class sizes right now are below school committee guidelines. And then the last one, support the new Director of Student Services with goal number 3 of Medfield 2021, and that's strategy 1.1, 1.2, 2.1.1, and 2.1.2. Essentially, that is looking at the entire Student Services Department, establishing that mission, that vision, holding those focus groups with parents, that whole process, working with Mary for that. So Mary has just submitted her first draft of her entry plan. She and I are meeting on that Wednesday, and we'll be ready to release that to you folks probably in February. But she's got a lot of data. She coded the data, and it's a really, really good plan. So we're looking forward to that as well. So that's what I have for the goals. I'd entertain any feedback that you have, and any changes you would like made.
I noticed, I think there's been a lot of questions regarding challenge success in the community. Who was on the committee? Why were they chosen? What's the status on it? So, and I noticed today in the blog from the high school, or the weekly update, there was a little blurb, but I suppose feedback would be to get, even though it is in early stages, to get more information out to the community. What does it mean, and why are we doing this? And I think that would be helpful to a lot of the families.
Sure. I mean, just to, respond to that a little bit, as part of Challenge Success, we have a coach that works with us. And, she came and she looked at we did the exercise, we look at all what we're doing for SEL. And again, this is her perspective, was impressed with all the stuff we're already doing. So I think that's, I think stuff like this does take time. So communication can absolutely be improved on that, but it does take time. It's not the panacea for everything. It's gonna take some time as we go through the process.
Right. I think the point is not just what's the end game,
Right.
but where are you in the process?
Right.
Just to keep communication open, to avoid speculation, perceptions, et cetera.
Absolutely.
And I think to support you more, Jeff, too, the SMART concept, right? The measurable part, the M on that, right? Like goal number 5 is, you might put some metrics in there, like how you're going to support it. Obviously, it's not you directly, it's what, you're conducting the orchestra of the entire district, and that conducting helps meet these goals. And to support you into meeting those goals, having something identifiable that's measurable for that, and for any of them,
Sure.
actually, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
the STEAM pieces, what are the key pieces that...
So if it's related to the strategic plan, there are measurable evaluation pieces built into it, right?
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Leo.
I just want to say I appreciate you adding the word called it STEM, but that's because I'm getting old. The STEAM-related goal, I think, as I expressed before, I think that's an area we really need to be improving in. So thank you for putting that in there.
Great. Any other? Yeah, thank you very much.
We need to vote these, so I move that we approve the superintendent's goals.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. All right, other items since posting on January 3rd?
Madam Chair.
Nope, okay. Old business policy review?
So it's the second reading from what Mary presented to you at the last meeting. Hopefully that you got a chance to take a look at it, and if there's any feedback, we can take it now and bring it back if we need to, or you folks can vote to approve and update that policy.
Comments?
I mean, really, truly, this is simply adding language that the state and DC and the Mass Association of School Committees would like us to add, just in terms of protected status. So it's relatively uncomplicated, and I can't imagine that we would like to exclude more people. So I move to approve the proposed changes to the co-curricular and extracurricular activities as written on the current draft number 2.
Second?
You'll second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
The same one that's currently posted on the website, just to verify.
I believe so, correct?
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, beautiful. Dale Street project?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your packet, you have the letter that was sent to Mike Marcucci, Chair of the Medfield Board of Selectmen, essentially outlining the feasibility study agreement that MSBA has with every town and school district when they get to this phase. This is going to be on the agenda tomorrow night for the Board of Selectmen. Mike Quinlan and I will be there to answer any questions of the Board of Selectmen. But you see it's many pages and goes through all the responsibilities that the town has, the district has, in terms of MSBA and what the limitations are and what they'll pay for and what they won't. It's it's a standard agreement that they do. I mean, that's what it is, and it's been looked at by town council. Mark has had it for a couple of weeks now. He's going to update any changes that he wants. I have not heard from him at all about any changes that he wants, but I'm sure he'll tell us tomorrow night if there are some changes. But essentially, it's like we've gone through the entire process with the SOI. They put all this stuff together, and we need to go through it and sign. Every bit of this process has been the same. So it's pretty lock and step with MSBA.
Great.
And the Exhibit A is what we talked about at the last meeting. Those are the numbers that Tim gave us with the breakdown of the feasibility study.
Right.
And again, very similar to other districts in the same spot we are. But that's just an FYI. It's really no vote for you folks.
Okay.
It's the Board of Selectmen that that have to agree to sign off on this tomorrow.
And just, just a reminder, the reason the Board of Selectmen have to vote on it is because the town owns the buildings. We manage the buildings and maintain the buildings, but the town owns them, so it's the town government that actually has to be responsible. I was part of the negotiation of one of the very first ones of these. It hasn't changed very much, and they do not accept changes lightly.
No, that's for sure. And they'll push right back if you have some.
Yeah.
There's one part, too, that I want to just highlight is the reimbursement rate calendar, that
Right.
summary. I mean, I think that's important. It's the exact same rate that we had on the boiler project, 39.84%. So that's going to be our reimbursement for costs during this project, unless they recalculate it and change it again on us, but that's.
Once they commit, they usually don't recalculate it.
Right.
Usually.
Super.
And the other piece of that is Mike Quinlan has scheduled the first school building committee kickoff meeting, which I believe is the 23rd, Michael? Is that what it is, Leo, 23rd?
Yeah, 23rd.
January 23rd, a Wednesday evening, so that will be posted, and that's going to be our kickoff with all the members, and we try to decide how we're going to schedule our meetings and so on. But the first order of business really is to go through and put out a requisition for an OPM, an owner's project manager. So that's what we need to do with that and go through that process. So MSBA has a lot of control over this. We put the documents together, they have to approve it before it gets posted. I mean, they control a lot. It's not like the old days, so.
Well,
that's
the old
gonna be
days went bankrupt, so.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to talk about in our first kickoff meeting on the 23rd.
Great. All right, next is future elementary enrollment.
So the only thing I wanted to highlight there, and I put it in your narrative, is just the times that we have for kindergarten
All right.
sign up and registration. We had 100, I think as of last Friday, it was about 174, 175, so a little bit more than when we put the narrative together. We have 203 out there, students that are out there, and 174 have contacted us. So that's the pre-registration piece. So we will see we'll know by the end of the month exactly who's coming, or at least to get a good sense of that, whether we're going to have the 203 or even more of that. So that'll give us a sense of where we are. Again, this is the first wave of multi-years of 31.6% increase over 10 years after having a 13.4% decrease over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids coming. So
Jeff, before my phone buzzes, for the folks who are watching at home, obviously that's an increase over the current numbers. Is there still ongoing conversation about how to squeeze them all into Memorial?
absolutely. Yeah, I think by the end of the month we'll have that. If not the first meeting of February, that'll be all squared away.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a good shot of that. It's going to just be.
It's going to be creative, I'm sure.
Very creative.
That's why we're all
We're still working on it. Very creative.
second floor.
Yeah.
Bring your hats and mittens.
All right.
2 and 3
Donations?
is the same.
Sorry.
Let's see.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying that 203 was the same projection that we had previously, I think, through NESDEC.
Well, how many of this year, though?
Yeah, 203 was based on, people who were in, but
Right.
not who registered. so.
Right.
And there may be some who
So that was the
elect
most
to
recent.
hold back or go to private school.
And it also doesn't include anyone that moves in, right? So
Right.
the good thing, what we tried to do, and the reason why we moved up the registration is that if you have those folks that pre-register that live in town, then they should get first dibs on full-day kindergarten, right? So the way the structure was before, you could have someone moving in and they could get a slot in full-day kindergarten over someone that's been here for, 10 years. So we wanted to move that up so that we could almost guarantee based on, the numbers, that folks that live here first would get in and that wanted to get in would get in, versus having it later with people in a lottery and everything else. So once we straighten out that space, we'll be in good shape. So we do have some donations. I'm just going to go through them quickly for you. So first one is Blake Middle School. $600, Jose Vachon World Language, $1,000, library books for world language, $1,500, Matt De La Pena author visit from the Blake PTO to be deposited in the Blake gift account. That's the first one. Second one is also from Blake. A check of $2,992.09 made out to Blake Middle School from Grin and Barrett. I want to say Grin and Barrett so bad, but you can't. This is a photographer commission check and deposited in the Blake gift account. And the last one is from Leaders Environmental, and that is for the district into the district gift account for $200. I would ask that you approve those as presented.
Motion to approve donations as noted.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you very much. And next one is fiscal year 20 budget update.
So just a couple of things. I know in the narrative we talked about trying to keep it in the fours, our budget. We're at 4.85 now is what we're looking at. And we're doing a few other things that we're getting, as we're getting more information, to bring that down a little bit. We're hoping to have it around 4.5 by the public hearing. That's our goal. And we'll see how that plays out. Remember, at that point, it's the superintendent's recommended budget before it becomes the school committee's budget that evening. A couple of other things. Next week, we'll be sending out the presentation with a narration on that. So that goes out either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, give or take. What we're going to do is attach a Google form to that, so that if someone has a specific question about the budget or about the presentation, they can just put it right on the Google form, and we'll do our best to answer that during the public hearing.
Good.
Just to try to give folks some time to look at it, digest it a little bit, and ask some questions.
Will you still be accepting old-fashioned email, Jeff?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. And people still ask questions that night, too. We're just trying to give many opportunities for people to ask questions about the budget.
Written letters?
Sure.
Carrier pigeon.
Carrier pigeon would work.
Skywriting.
Anything works. Skywriting. Any of those are acceptable, and so we'll see how it goes. This will be the first time we do the presentation with a narration, so we'll see how that works out.
Jeff, what is, I'm sure you addressed this at one of the December meetings I couldn't make, but what does the zero-based budget require for us? If we had no increases, but just, the contractual increases, what is that?
Around 4, Michael? Yeah,
That's
what,
4%.
4.1?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's excluding contracts that are being currently negotiated, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
On to informational items.
Let's see what I had for you. A couple of informational items. Just want to give you an update. As you know, I'm on the chief of police search, and we had another meeting this week, and we start interviews next Wednesday and the Wednesday after in the evening. So we're down to, I think, nine candidates. So it's been just like the fire chief search, great experience. Working with folks in town, going through the process. The consultant that they've used the last couple of times has been great. He's, a very seasoned consultant with these types of searches. So we're hoping to, I think, bring a couple of names to the Board of Selectmen in February. So it's interesting that I think I talked about this during the fire chief. They do an assessment center for police and fire chiefs, and they spend an entire day on Saturday, and they bring the folks in and give them different scenarios and just watch how they react. And there's people there that assess them and how they react and what their response is, and that takes the entire day, 8 to 4, that they go through the candidates. So some candidates drop out before that because they know what that entails, and some do a great job with that. So that's at the end of the month. That's in January. On a Saturday, I forget what Saturday it is in January, but so it's a pretty involved process, and a lot of time and effort for everyone on the committee. So I want to thank Christine and everyone that's been working so hard on that.
Thanks for doing it.
My pleasure. I think it's an important role. I mean, we work so closely with police and fire, and it's great to have an opportunity to be a part of that, to choose the next person you'll be working so closely with. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
All righty. Future agenda items, FY20 budget, Medfield 2021 update. Our next meeting is January 28th, our public hearing meeting. But before we close, any updates, Maddie?
I don't really have anything because we just got back. This week, I know a lot of people are really stressed out, so be afraid of your high school kids because last week of
Did you say
tests,
be afraid of you guys?
yeah, last week of tests before midterms. And next week, midterms, I've heard a lot of different opinions about the new schedule for them. I know some people love it, some people hate it. I don't know. I think it's going to take down a lot of the stress, though. But yeah, we're all doing okay.
Oh, so what's some of the feedback?
Why do they hate it? Because they
Well, I know the seniors, a lot of the seniors say they're happy that it happened senior year because they get less midterms, but at the same time, they're more prepared for college. But a lot of people like the half days, even though it's a lot of studying. A lot of people just love just going in, taking your test, and then going home and not having to worry about other homework and stuff. But I think no one can really say anything until we've gone through the week with the block days and stuff, so.
That's the attitude. Till you go through it.
says the senior, right?
Because you have 2 midterms, right?
Yeah, and then some people have their AP midterms.
Of course. Alrighty. Okay. Thank you.
I just had a budget question. Last time, the last meeting, you were referencing the transportation snafu that Framingham had thrown at you. What was the status?
So we had a meeting, we had a big powwow. Every business administrator, superintendent, special education director of the 16 districts that represent or part of ACCEPT. And Framingham disclosed to us that they are leaving the transportation piece. Not the collaborative, just the transportation piece. Which, you know, as we talked about, puts a huge burden on us and Medway and Holliston and Natick and others. So we are going to have another meeting. We've asked the financial department of ACCEPT to go through the numbers again, and we are meeting, I think it's the 24th in the afternoon, just the superintendents, the board directors in ACCEPT to try to work something out.
Okay.
I think what we got to was there's a surplus in the collaborative, so how can we access that surplus to offset the cost for us? Now, if you're a member of the collaborative and you don't use the transportation, say like Wellesley, well, it's their money too, right? So we're trying to figure out a way that we can do it equitably and still offset the cost for transportation and not, so that we're still working through that one.
Did Framingham find a better deal?
So Framingham threatened to do this, I want to say 4 years ago. And so what they decided is that if they go away from ACCEPT and not be part of the collaborative and they go to a certain vendor, that vendor will give them a better price.
They've been able to do that?
So I would say that in
How's that
3
phone
years and that
trusted?
contract is up, that vendor is going to want to recoup what they didn't get those first 3 years. So I think those numbers will be different. And I suspect they'll be asking to come back into ACCEPT, but we'll see. Yeah. It's unfortunate because it really, I mean, the whole reason you join a collaborative is because you're all in this together, you know, and that's the whole spirit of it. So it's really, really unfortunate.
I know on the Cape that all the towns are leaving to go to the collaborative for transportation because of the costs savings around it.
Yeah, I think one transportation company has decided they were going to move their headquarters to Framingham as part of this, and that was going to allow them to, at least for the first 3 years, make it worth their while. So it's unfortunate.
Anything else, Megan?
I know we're heading into budget season. I would like, though, to talk a little bit in one of the future meetings about progress that the SEL task force may be making on the start time change. I know we've talked about that off and on over the course of the past couple of years. I think, you know, a lot of districts have started to consider it much more seriously. I know it's a long conversation. When done well, it seems to make a big difference in student achievement and address a lot of the SEL issues that we're focused on. I know that, you know, teachers often have mixed views about it. It is a significant change for a lot of them, and so that, you know, that's an issue that that's going to take a lot of time to resolve. So
Right.
I just sort of like to get a status update
Sure.
on where we are on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, it's one of those things that has so many layers, right? So it's not just changing the start time, but there's so many other layers that go to it. I know there's a local district that voted last year to change the start time, and they were gung-ho, and now their school committee just sent something out tonight, actually. I got an email from someone that lives there, that they've changed it now again to, they can't do it next year, they have to do it another year. So they're looking at 2021 instead of 1920. So it's just a lot to it,
But is there anything that stands out, whether it's sports or is it something else?
For
Mostly
them, it was
sports?
more of a transportation issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'd be in better shape with that, with transportation, and we've talked about this before, based on the amount of buses at Dunkin' Donuts and Blue Moon every morning. We'd be able to move that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's looking at the workday for folks. It's looking at outside activities, those kinds of things. So nothing that can't be done. It's a conversation.
Yeah, so on the SEL task force, I'm part of the schedule subcommittee, and that where we discuss the time change, and the students on the subcommittee talk about the sports. Robert Parga talks about the sports. So, and I think there are other layers, but it's fascinating, at least from the student perspective. One kid's on the ski team, so as it is, he's got to leave, 45 minutes to an hour early to get to the slopes. And so it's
Yeah, it certainly, and it would be, it's a difficult change, but I think it's one a lot of districts are undertaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more that do it, the easier a lot of those accommodations become.
Yeah, I agree.
There are always going to be some one-off individual cases that are more burdened, but.
So it's important that we put this on the agenda at some point, and maybe get that task force.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the opening meeting, with staff, is one of the things I mentioned to them is that if we're going to talk about being a data-driven and a research-driven organization, I mean, you can't ignore the research on this stuff.
Right.
You just can't.
It may be worth going to visit some of the other sites that are doing it, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I've had numerous conversations with Ashland, and they just went and did it. They didn't worry about the TVL or anything else. They just did it. So, there's been issues with that as far as games, kids having to leave during their last block all the time to make games, because if you're, like, for instance, we're playing a away game in Norton, and that's a good ride.
It is.
Right? And
Even
so
at the
I
regular
think-
time, it's still
right.
good, right? Yeah.
So I think that's, some of those, and again, it's not all driven by sports, but it's a reality, right? If we're a part of a league that has X amount of schools in it, and, there's issues around the fall when the time changes and getting those outside games in with no lights, I mean, that's just the reality. I'm not saying I don't want to do it. I'm just saying it's the reality.
So if there's data out there to support it, couldn't you get together with your superintendent people and say, let's just do this?
Well, yeah, but I don't think not everyone has the stomach to do that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they just.
Courage.
I mean, no one wants to change the elementary school. I mean, people don't want to do that stuff,
Yeah, there's
right?
not
They
a
just don't want to do
consensus
it.
among a lot of people.
Yeah, people don't.
It was hard in Sharon when it was done some years ago. I would
Yeah.
say that, and that even including the teachers pushed back. And now, when asked, they would never go back the other way.
Right, I bet.
So, yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily advocating, I'm not saying that I would definitely push to do it, but it's an important conversation to have.
Yes,
I know it's been happening at the SAL task force, but
Yeah.
fundamentally, that's something I'd like to talk to you about.
But it would be good to have some
Yeah.
updates from the
Yep.
SEL task force. That's great.
We bring that up at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Make sure we can get
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Because there are lots of pieces that aren't, that could be shared to give people updates, so that'd be great. Leo.
Happy New Year. Yeah, right? It's, glad to see things are moving forward, and everyone's here tonight, which is nice as well. And keep up the good work, everybody. I hope everyone's going well.
Thank you.
Excited about the school, about the building kicking off.
It's gonna be
That's
fun.
actually going to be very exciting.
Mhm.
So.
Maddie, thank you for scaring the heck out of me, because I will be at the high school tomorrow and Friday
You'll be
as
fine.
a freshman and a junior for the first time in 30 years.
Can you get the pizza?
I might get the pizza. I don't know. Actually,
Better
no,
now.
I can't. But
Better than it was 30 years ago.
so I'm very excited about that, and just kind of continually going to meetings and doing the things that we do when we are not here.
Mhm.
So
You gonna buy lunch tomorrow, or are you gonna bring your lunch?
Oh, geez. I have to decide that? Do I need a code?
It's Taco Tuesday.
Can I use Ian's code?
Ooh, I don't know about
Is that illegal?
It might be, yeah.
Who are you going to sit with?
That I don't know.
That's what I get at home. Who am I going to sit with?
Now she's even more scared.
Yeah.
Trauma.
Yeah.
Super.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. That's about it right now.
And
Thank you.
elementary school, they want you to sit with them. Let's see. when they
I
get it when you-
know, at elementary
Right.
school.
Not so here.
I know. Well, this weekend was a big alumni weekend. We at the Zulo, the MMA hosted this reunion jazz band or alumni music thing, which was awesome, and it was so great to see these kids come back as a community. It's a little family within a family, no matter what age you are. So it was great to see the existing kids with kids who graduated many moons ago, and so thank you for organizing. And so it's a special thing. So it was cool. And then on Wait, Don't Tell Me. Did you any of you guys hear that? Uzo Abuda was Aduba was one of the guests. That was so cool. So it was alumni all around. You know the woman and
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so those were my highlights. And then I read in the high school post that our esports team
Yeah.
is going into
We're in
the
the playoffs. Absolutely, first
This is
playoffs.
a thing. I can't believe it.
I'm not shocked at all.
I am.
UC
They were, like,
Irvine has
ranked
a
in
very
Massachusetts,
intense
too.
physical training for their esports team. No kidding.
Do they really?
Honest to God, core strength, they train almost as much as the athletes in the more
It's
kind of
been
like.
it's been a
Fascinating.
great experience and great opportunity for those kids.
But it's
They've had
another
a ball with
outlet
it.
for
They've
people
had a ball with it.
to channel into. So
It's going to be my second greatest excuse for more screen time.
I know. So fascinating.
Come talk to me.
We have a PTO talk this coming Wednesday, right? Regarding grades, weighted, unweighted. So that'll be interesting. So other than that, that's it.
I move adjournment.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You're watching Medfield TV, community shows.